As I travel through life with its trouble and strife, I've a glorious hope to give cheer on the way. Soon my toil will be o'er, and I'll rest on that shore where the night has been turned into day. Up in the beautiful Paradise Valley, by the side of the river of life. Up in the valley, the wonderful valley, we'll be free from all pain and all strife. There we shall live in the rose-tinted garden, neath the shade of the evergreen tree. How I long for the Paradise Valley, where the beauty of heaven I'll see. As I roam the hillside, or I list to the tide, as I pluck the sweet flowers that grow in the dale, a faint picture is there of a land bright and fair, where perennial flowers ne'er fail. Up in the beautiful Paradise Valley, by the side of the river of life. Up in the valley, the wonderful valley, we'll be free from all pain and all strife. There we shall live in the rose-tinted garden, neath the shade of the evergreen tree. How I long for the Paradise Valley, where the beauty of heaven I'll see. Though your garden is rare, it is not to compare with the flowers that bloom in the garden above. In the midst of it grows Sharon's perfect sweet rose. 'Tis the wonderful flower of love. Up in the beautiful Paradise Valley, by the side of the river of life. Up in the valley, the wonderful valley, we'll be free from all pain and all strife. There we shall live in the rose-tinted garden, neath the shade of the evergreen tree. How I long for the Paradise Valley, where the beauty of heaven I'll see.
It's Friday. Jesus is praying. Peter's sleeping. Judas is betraying. But Sunday's coming. It's Friday. Pilate's struggling. The council is conspiring. The crowd is vilifying. They don't even know that Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The disciples are running like sheep without a shepherd. Mary's crying. Peter is denying. But they don't know that Sundays are coming. It's Friday. The Romans beat my Jesus. They robe him in scarlet. They crown him with thorns. But they don't know that Sunday's coming. It's Friday. See Jesus walking to Calvary, his blood dripping, his body stumbling, and his spirit's burdened. But you see, it's only Friday. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The world's winning. People are sinning, and evil's grinning. It's Friday. The soldiers nailed my Savior's hands to the cross. They nailed my Savior's feet to the cross. And then they raised him up next to criminals. It's Friday. But let me tell you something, Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The disciples are questioning what has happened to their king. And the Pharisees are celebrating that their scheming has been achieved. But they don't know it's only Friday. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. He's hanging on the cross, feeling forsaken by his Father, left alone and dying. Can nobody save him? Oh, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The earth trembles. The sky grows dark. My King yields his spirit. It's Friday. Hope is lost. Death has won. Sin has conquered. And Satan's just a laughing. It's Friday. Jesus is buried. A soldier stands guard, and a rock is rolled into place. But it's Friday. It is only Friday. Sunday is a-coming.
Good morning, church. I hope you just watched the video. It's Friday now, but Sunday is coming. This phrase is now a staple of the black church in America, symbolizing hope. The world may be dark now, but Sunday is coming. And the phrase has been traced back to S.M. Lockridge, a famous black Baptist preacher of the 1950s. He began preaching at the Fourth Ward Baptist Church in Ennis, Texas. And in 1952, he was named pastor of the Calvary Baptist Church in San Diego, California. This phrase is taken from one of his Easter sermons, became a famous line symbolizing hope. It's Friday now, but Sunday is coming. And perhaps there's no more relevant phrase for our world today. It's Friday now, but Sunday is coming. Though we are still amidst the coronavirus pandemic and all the fallout from that, and thus we're not able to meet. Though it's Friday in our world, we must also remember that it is also springtime in our world. And just as sure as the sun rises day after day, we must celebrate and live with certainty that though it may be Friday now, Sunday is coming. And we look forward with hope to the day we can meet again in person. And though it may be Friday, Sunday is coming, and with that hope, we continue our journey towards Easter. The Sunday, the whole world celebrates and reflects together on the resurrection of our Lord. We again take our launching point from our text for this series, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 8. We've seen Paul in verses 3 and 4 lays out for the Corinthians the kerygma, that core of our faith. Christ died, Christ was buried, and Christ has been raised. And then we saw last week that he supports this claim of resurrection with a list of witnesses. And the question was raised to us, do you trust the witnesses? Do we believe the witnesses? And that's a tough question for me. Do I trust the witnesses? Do I trust that these ancient people saw what they claimed they saw? Do I trust that Peter, Paul, Mary, John, and Jesus, and all of Jesus' disciples, do I trust they are telling the truth? And that's really a hard one. I don't know these people. I don't know their character. I don't know if they have the habit of truth-telling. With y'all, I can learn from experience. If you've ever, for example, taken a car to Larry to be serviced and he's been right several times in diagnosing what's wrong with it, then you might be inclined to believe Larry when he says something's wrong with your car. Now, you know Larry is a truth teller. Now, with Damien, I'm less sure. I never know if he's joking or not. I'm joking here, Damien. But with each other, we can learn to trust the character of the person. Do they have a habit of telling the truth? But this is difficult with people who've been dead, or as Paul would say, asleep for 2,000 years. We might be inclined to disbelieve. However, I think when we look at the stories of these witnesses, we will find that we may easily relate to the hearts and minds of these first witnesses, and find in their stories reasons to trust their testimony. And it is because of these witnesses that though it may be Friday for us now, Sunday is coming. And this morning I want us to consider together the story of two witnesses. This morning we join them in their Friday experience. Our text this morning is Luke chapter 24, verses 13 through 15, if you want to follow along. Again, as always, before we read our text, we need some context. So Jesus has just died. Some of the women disciples on Friday evening saw where Jesus was buried, and they leave to go prepare spices to put on the body, as was custom. And at the beginning of Luke 24, the women come back on Sunday morning with the spices they had prepared. And this tells us something about the mindset of these women disciples. They had no idea, no hope, not the slightest suspicion that Jesus would arise from the dead. You don't bring spices to an aborted corpse if you think the corpse is going to be raised. The women disciples aren't coming to see the resurrected Lord. They are coming to grieve and mourn. The women disciples are coming to the tomb grieving and defeated and without hope. It's Friday for these disciples. The man they followed and admired died a horrible death, and they have come to grieve and perform one last act of service. But for these women disciples, the unthinkable happens. The tomb is empty, and they're puzzled. As we find out in John, the first thought is the body was stolen. But a messenger appears to them and makes the astonishing claim, he is not here. He was raised. The messenger reminds them of Jesus' words, and they run off to tell all the male apostles who refused to believe them. We're told that Peter ran and looked in the tomb, and he found it empty and was surprised. But the text does not indicate that this makes him believe Jesus was raised. Then the story jumps to later that evening, and we join two disciples of Jesus leaving Jerusalem on the road to Emmaus. Let's walk along with these two disciples on this brisk Sunday evening. Beginning in Luke chapter 24, verse 13. It says, "And behold, two of them were going that very day to a village named Emmaus, which is about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking with each other about the things which had taken place. And while they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself approached and began traveling with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. And he said to them, 'What are these words that you are exchanging with one another as you are walking?' And they stood still, looking sad. One of them, named Cleopas, answered and said to him, 'Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem and unaware of the things which have happened here in these days?' And he said to them, 'What things?' And they say to him, 'The things about Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty in word and deed in the sight of God and all the people. And how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to the sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, besides all this, it is the 3rd day since these things have happened.' And also some women among us amazed us. When they were at the tomb early this morning, they did not find his body. They came saying that they had seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it exactly as the women had said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, 'O foolish men, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things and to enter into glory?' Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. And And as they approached the village where they were going, he continued as if he was going further. But they urged him, saying, "Stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. And when he had reclined at the table with them, he took the bread, blessed, broke it, and gave it to them, saying. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to one another, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was speaking with us on the road, while he was explaining the Scriptures to us?" They got up that very hour and returned to Jerusalem and found the 11 and those who were gathered together. And they said to them, "The Lord has indeed been raised and has appeared to Simon." And they began to relate their experiences on the road and how he was recognized by them in the breaking of bread. Though it's technically Sunday in the story, we join these disciples in their Friday experience. Note that they are leaving Jerusalem. But this is not a joyful leaving. They aren't leaving Jerusalem to go proclaim good news. They are leaving Jerusalem with heads bowed low, saddened and without hope. The man Jesus they had been following has been brutally executed for treason. The movement is defeated, and many are hiding away in their rooms. The events of Friday still loom heavy in their hearts and minds. Perhaps they walk slow. No energy or motivation. Their leader is defeated, and they wonder now what they will do. The road from Jerusalem to Emmaus is a long, slow, and hopeless journey. Maybe we can identify with these disciples who are leaving Jerusalem, whose hearts are heavy from Friday. We, like these disciples, may find that it's Friday in our world. We may be experiencing the troubles of the world, forced into our homes, troubled and not knowing what is next. How long this pandemic will continue, how our jobs will be affected. Or maybe it's things in our personal lives, struggles with family, distance from family members we're not able to visit, plans being canceled. We, like the disciples, may walk slowly from Jerusalem to Emmaus with heads bowed low. But as we walk along on this slow, hopeless road, Jesus meets us. Jesus himself meets us. Though we may not know it yet, hope meets us. And though we may not recognize him at first, Sunday is coming. And Jesus asks us, what are we talking about? What's the topic of conversation? And the question sort of stings a bit because it reminds us that it is Friday in our world. And all we can do with the disciples is stand still, looking sad. Cleopas turns and asks the somewhat rhetorical question, "Are you the only one in Jerusalem unaware of all that has happened these past days?" But Jesus presses him further, "What things?" And Cleopas tells Jesus all that has taken place. Notice Cleopas points to the first part of the kerygma. He tells at least part of the gospel. Jesus did miracles, spoke great words, but now he has been crucified and died. But ending on that note, the story is not a story of good news. It is a story of defeat. Christ, the Messiah, is dead. And then the disciples in verse 21 have the only rational response. We had hoped. We had hoped. We had hoped that he was going to redeem Israel. We had hoped but it's now been 3 days. There is no hope now. We had hoped. Perhaps the most somber words in all of Scripture. Perhaps the most somber words ever written. We had hoped. These are the words of defeat. We had hoped. The past tense tells us that hope is now gone. Their hope has ceased. We had hoped means that their hopes and dreams never came to fulfillment. These words on the lips of the apostles tell us that they have no inkling, no idea of what God is doing. Their leader is dead. They are fleeing the city in dread. Hope is gone. They expect to return to their old lives. We had hoped are the words of Friday. And perhaps you've uttered these words alongside these disciples. We had hoped. I had hoped. We had hoped to do better on our exams. We had hoped to be more financially secure by now. We had hoped to be gathered together again this Sunday. We had hoped to hear better news from the doctors. We had hoped that she would not have passed so soon. We had hoped that the relationship would not have ended. We had hoped to see them one last time. We had hoped. So maybe it's Friday in our world. Maybe it's Friday in your own life. Maybe these are the words you find on your lips as you walk the long road to Emmaus. We had hoped. We had hoped. Yet whatever it may be in your life, though it may be Friday now, Sunday is coming. Sunday is coming. Literally, these two disciples know that Sunday for them was nearer than they realized. Their words, uttered and gloomed, "It has been 3 days," were the seeds of a new hope. A hope reborn. They tell the strangers of some odd news that some women had come and reported to them that morning. The strange news that the tomb was empty, and some messengers had said that the Messiah was alive. Some other men found it as these women said, but they didn't see him. They can't be true. Unless we find these hopeless disciples on this road to Emmaus, the empty tomb means nothing to them. They dare not hope again. But then at this point, the stranger takes an odd tone with these disciples. He chastises them. Why are you so slow to believe? Have you not read in Moses and the prophets that the Messiah must suffer these things and enter into glory? These disciples are still not aware yet, but Jesus himself has just told them the kerygma, the rest of the gospel. And as the day is drawing to a close and it's dangerous to travel at night, the disciples invite this stranger to stay with them and share a meal with them. And in words reminiscent of the Last Supper, Jesus takes bread, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it to the disciples. And in this act, they recognize him who said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Jesus is revealed to these disciples in the Lord's Supper, the breaking of bread. These two defeated and hopeless disciples go from defeated followers to passionate believers in an instant. Their hearts burning with the passion because they have good news to proclaim. They're so overjoyed that they don't even finish their meal, it seems. They leave that same hour, that very hour, the Greek says, to return to Jerusalem. They don't care that it's dark and dangerous because the light of the world has reappeared. Unlike their sad, slow walk from Jerusalem to Emmaus, they now make that return to Emmaus, return to Jerusalem hastily and full of hope, because Sunday has come. They find in Jerusalem the apostles and these other disciples gathered together, and they proclaim together, "The Lord has indeed been raised." They proclaim that final note of the kerygma that makes it good news. Christ not only died and was buried, but Christ has indeed been raised. And the disciples rejoiced together that first Easter Sunday. And so we asked last week, and we began, do we believe the witnesses? Do you trust these witnesses? Do you trust that they saw the risen Lord? And while that's a hard question to answer since I've never met them in person, I read this story. The story of these two defeated disciples, these hopeless disciples. And I have to say, yes. Yes, I do believe them, for I find truth in the story. How else do two defeated disciples go from standing still, looking sad, uttering the words, "We had hoped," to then returning to proclaim that they had seen the risen Lord? If one truly believed that Jesus had not died, you would not utter the words, "We had hoped." And the only plausible explanation for how one goes from "we had hoped" to "the Lord has indeed been raised" is that they encountered this risen Lord. The theologian Clarence Jordan put it this way. He writes, "The proof that God raised Jesus from the dead is not the empty tomb, but the full hearts of his transformed disciples. The crowning evidence that he lives is not a vacant grave, but a spirit-filled fellowship. Not a rolled-away stone, but a carried-away church." It may have been Friday for these disciples as they set out for Emmaus, but Jesus meets them on their journey. And Sunday came. And the road to Jerusalem seemed much shorter because they had good news to proclaim. Though we still may be on the road to Emmaus, though it still may be Friday in our world, take heart, brothers and sisters. Believe the testimony of these transformed disciples. Take heart because Sunday is coming, when Jesus appears to us and is made known to us in the breaking of bread. Take heart, Cross Timbers. Sunday is coming. Believe the good news.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch his treasure.
How great the pain of searing loss! The Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to